The Department of Education under Donald Trump is planning to terminate about 50%, that's half, of its current staff. The plan is to place many people on administrative leave starting next Friday. Officials tell NBC News that the career staff will be asked to basically take laptops home, work from home tomorrow. This could lead to over 2,000 career employees getting termination notices. That's news we just got in, and we have more, actually, on education later in the hour, but we wanted to share that breaking news when we got it. Now we turn to legal news as Donald Trump is facing these losses in court, starting the week with what Newsweek calls a triple legal blow. And we've been charting this for you. This week, early in the week, it's mostly losses. 2 over Trump's executive order on DEI, 1 about federal grants, the other restoring grants, at least temporarily, for teachers who lost them under the initial order, which is paused. Another appeals court denying Trump's bid to pause the birthright citizenship order. So that's been frozen for some time. And a district judge temporarily blocking the efforts to deport the Columbia graduate student who is also a Palestinian activist, Mahmoud Khalil. Another loss over the USAID funding freeze, which we've been covering. A judge ruling Congress has that power. As we've explained, it's more about power than policy. You could change some of that funding, but most courts have said you would need Congress to do it. One judge saying the agency is operating with unusual secrecy in dealing with the Musk clash. And that's what we have as of Tuesday. A pattern here over the last 2 weeks, you can see the many legal losses. All of this paving the way for more loyalists in what were nonpartisan positions. And as DOJ faces a wider purge of career officials, we're joined now by the former head of the DOJ Criminal Division, Leslie Caldwell, amidst these debates over the enemies list, the DOJ's approach. We've had over this week reports about basically pushing out national security officials at DOJ, other sort of nonpartisan figures. Tonight, we have reporting about shrinking the public integrity section, which has always sort of been the cop against corruption. Tell us your view of what that section does. Not everyone follows every detailed section of DOJ, and how you react to this news.
So the public integrity section essentially investigates and prosecutes most major public corruption cases in the United States, all over the country. They have a lot of specialized knowledge and experience, and they do cases involving members of Congress, including the Senate and the House, state and local public officials. They're involved in really pretty much every significant public corruption case in the United States. So it's really quite surprising and alarming, frankly, to see this most recent action where they're essentially apparently going to disband the public integrity section. A
lot of this is very blunt.
Extremely.
There was talk during the campaign about what do you really mean and how literal. Is Trump only aggrieved over his personal case history, right? That level of revenge. When they say they're not going to enforce bribery abroad, which they've said, when they're going to shrink, or some people are calling this partially disbanding, patrolling bribery and corruption in the United States, that would potentially apply to many politicians. It's not clear that it may be somewhat self-interested in the revenge tour over Republicans, but it might also open up more potential corruption by any number of officials in any number of parts of the country. How can you be a DOJ that gives a pass to corrupt politicians?
You know, I think that that's a huge mistake that they're making, and you used the word blunt before. I think that it's hard to see that this is really well thought out. I don't know how much time was spent thinking about this. I think that what Trump is doing is a combination of revenge for his personal issues, things that he perceives to be slights to him, and also essentially, potentially being able to reward other people who, by just essentially immunizing them from harm, by doing things like destroying the public integrity section and the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act section, which is the overseas bribery, as you mentioned. They also disbanded the kleptocracy initiative, which was focused on theft of essentially funds from foreign countries that was then used to invest in United States things like real estate. So there's a real element here of these anti-corruption efforts are not valued and should be stopped.
Yeah.
And what that ultimately is intended to achieve is hard to say, but it doesn't look like it could be anything good from my vantage point.
Yeah, and if we kind of even put the MAGA and current polarization aside, right, if you just go back to first principles in governance and in law, societies with rule of law care a lot about patrolling the public good and the public welfare, because of course there is a temptation. If a random individual is overseeing a pension fund and they have now billions of dollars of sway, we were covering the markets earlier, of course there could be a temptation, if few are looking, to abuse that influence, whether it's with direct embezzlement and stealing or kickbacks or just getting all sorts of other quid pro quo special treatment for what they do with the billions, right? It stands to reason that we care about that even separate from the particular controversies of Donald Trump and his vengeance tour, right? And so do you worry that he sort of looks at the country and says, oh, he can make more deals with more corrupt folks in both parties if it's open season?
I mean, I obviously don't know what he thinks, but that's clearly the message, which is that we don't value these anti-corruption efforts. We don't value integrity in behavior.
Here is one of Mahmoud Khalil's attorneys, and she joins me now for her first TV interview on Mahmoud's case. Ms. Greer, thank you so much. First, I just want to ask if you've gotten a chance to talk to your client. Are you in touch with him, and do you know where he is?
Yes, and first I just want to say that I wouldn't call Mahmoud a dissident. I'd call him a human rights defender, and I think that's just a really important thing to highlight here. And yes, I have had a chance to talk with Mahmoud each day since, gosh, what day is it even today? Tuesday. We first heard from him yesterday, Monday, excuse me. It's been a long few days, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I have been able to talk to him a couple of times now, and I know his family is also in touch with him.
My understanding is the government's contention is they're using part of the federal code in which the Secretary of the State can unilaterally just deem someone deportable for national security or foreign policy reasons. Have they provided evidence? Is there process around that determination that they've provided to you?
You know, Chris, this is all just a rapidly developing situation. Mahmoud was taken just at 8:30 on Saturday night. We have slowly been privy to the paperwork, but it's coming in slowly. So we do not have access to evidence or any bases that have been provided to us outside of social media or media reports as to how and why the Secretary of State or the Department of State or the President or whoever's behind this. We have not yet had put into our hands a justification for this. Only that we know the provision that you just named, and beyond that, we do not yet have any more information. This is rapidly developing, and so, you know, certainly things are unfurling quickly. But yeah, as of now, no, we don't have that justification.
Right. I mean, just a cornerstone, obviously, of sort of common law tradition is that you have to name charges and you have to allow the accuser to face them. That's a sort of basic part of process. It doesn't. So what you're just saying is there's been no representation to you as attorneys of what the infraction is, to the extent there is one.
Well, I mean, this is the thing about the situation is, you know, Mahmoud is not accused of any crime, and this is an immigration process. And I think something that many of us in the United States are paying attention to with this new administration is the immigration system and how few due process rights there are in that system, and how the rules of evidence and the things people typically think of, like when they watch, you know, criminal procedural dramas on television and they see that there's evidence and, you know, there's an exchange of information and all of this kind of stuff, that doesn't apply in the immigration context. And this is all happening in that regulatory immigration context, which is all under the purview of the executive branch. It's outside of the purview, you know, of our Article III courts in the United States.
Although presumably the Constitution should still apply. I want to ask you a question because
presumably, yes.
And I want to make clear that saying that, say, I support Hamas as a statement is First Amendment protected speech. you can say that as an American. That's First Amendment protected, clear black letter law, that is. And also that many people opposed to Mahmoud's worldview accuse people like him of being Hamas supporters. That is a common thing that's leveraged. But I want to just ask you if it's fair or accurate to characterize him as a Hamas supporter, since that is essentially what is being said about him by many of the people supporting his detention.
Yes, and I think that's incredibly problematic. Mahmoud is a human rights defender. Mahmoud stands for the dignity and human rights for all. And what he saw happening in Gaza and also in his family's ancestral home in the West Bank, what he's been seeing, and what many students around the country, and I hope all of us have been seeing, is alarming and has caused many of us, including Mahmoud, to come forward and say that we do not stand for 2,000-pound bombs being dropped on women, children, and men, grown men who, are living their lives and, are being attacked from the air without any protection, no ability to leave. And Mahmoud stands for dignity and human rights, and everything that he has, put forward, everything that he stands for is grounded in those values. And I think it's also really important to note that Mahmoud is a Palestinian. His family was forcibly displaced from Tiberias, Palestine. They became refugees in Syria. He grew up in a refugee camp in Syria, and so he knows in his bones what the experience is of so many people, both in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank, and felt compelled to use his voice and his incredible mediation and negotiation skills, his incredible ability to put words to the pain and to the rights that he's...
My goodness, what you're seeing right now are late-night emergency court defeats for Trump. Markets are crashing and courts are reacting to him. I don't know how he has to be absolutely livid. We've, the joke, it's been around for a couple years now. We all remember when Cassidy Hutchinson, I don't know if she was the first one to say it, but there was something, ketchup all over the walls. Stuff was being thrown when she came in. People were cleaning up because Trump was really angry. He's had all of these angry outbursts at the TV when things haven't been going his way. All of these rumors we've had. I don't know if it was her exactly. People will correct me if I'm wrong. Look in the comments. But the reality is he has to be losing it because he's trying to use these early days to make an example, to show that the system is broken, to break your spirit, to break your will, to make you not just rightfully angry and or afraid of what Trump is doing, and those feelings are valid, I want to make that clear, but to make you feel hopeless. And it's not working, because he does see losses. He sees his efforts to attack citizens and permanent residents run up against roadblocks. You also see his plans fail. We've talked about it today, how not just in the United States, but the world is standing up to him. Zelensky was standing up to Trump. Canada standing up to Trump. Mexico standing up to Trump. All of this showcases he doesn't have the power he wants you to think he does.